Finally breaking the trend of cooldown exotics, the Warlock exotic gauntlets, the Winter's Guile, offer a very simple and plain bonus. The exotic perk on the Winter's Guile, being Warlord's Sigil, states that by eliminating enemies with melee attacks will increase your melee damage. This is obviously going to need some testing, but we'll see in a minute how much of a damage increase the exotic perk gives to your melee attacks. The Winter's Guile will also come stock with an energy counterbalance mod, which doesn't really have any ties to the exotic itself, since energy weapon recoil and melee attacks aren't exactly on the same page. If I were to change this mod out, I would go with either a Paragon mod or Kinetic Munitions Loader mod. Since the Winter's Guile only works with melee attacks, the exotic is entirely subclass neutral, and is equally as viable with all three Warlock subclasses. Before we get into the build, let's take the Winter's Guile out and see what it does. So getting a kill with the melee attack, whether or not it was a charged melee attack, will trigger the Warlord's Sigil perk, which will temporarily increase your melee damage for about 5 seconds. Getting another melee kill while the timer is still active will add another stack onto the Warlord's Sigil perk, up to a maximum of 5 stacks. If you're too slow in melee killing an enemy before the timer expires, you'll need to start again and you'll lose your melee damage buff. So how much of a damage buff does the Winter's Guile actually give you? From some experimenting, it seems to give you a 50% increase to your melee damage per stack, which does increase alongside your new melee damage. I'll provide an example. Say you deal 800 damage with your first melee attack, which kills an enemy. The Warlord's Sigil perk will trigger at 1 stack, and will grant you a 50% increase in melee damage for 5 seconds. So our new melee damage is going to be 800 plus 50% of 800, which is 400, equaling 1200. Now if we get another melee kill before the timer expires, we'll move up to 2 stacks, and again add another 50% onto the new damage total. So 1200 plus 50% of 1200, which is 600, equals 1800. At 3 stacks, this would equal 2700, at 4 stacks, it would equal 4050, and finally at 5 stacks, it will equal 6075 damage per melee attack. Once you get 5 stacks, you cannot increase the melee damage anymore, but getting a kill with your melee attack will reset the timer. Dealing this massive amount of damage on a melee attack is easily enough to take out most major enemies, probably even most shielded major enemies, and definitely stagger plenty of ultras. So now that we know what Winter's Guile actually does, let's consider how we should build. We need to chain melee kills together in rapid succession to keep the Warlord's Sigil timer alive. So we're going to need to play very aggressively, push up into the action, and get amongst the enemy. While the Winter's Guile is subclass neutral, I think there is a clear winner in terms of the best build. I'd say that the Devour Voidwalker configuration is excellent for the Winter's Guile, since you're absolutely going to take damage while playing in this reckless nature, and having the ability to heal on every kill will keep you alive for much longer. Refreshing your Devour timer alongside your Warlord's Sigil timer isn't too hard to keep track of, and since you're going to be rewarded with health and damage buffs for playing this way, you'll find yourself frantically looking for more enemies to kill, to keep the streak alive. So now that we've got the solid build with the Devour, where could we use this? Well, PvE is going to be an obvious yes. You'll encounter groups of enemies all the time, and taking care of them with melee attacks is very easy. The only limiting factor is going to be the amount of enemies you have within viable range, and you might find yourself just short of a target before your timer runs out. The potential for Winter's Guile is absolutely there in patrols, strikes and raids. Maybe not in the prestige modes, but fighting waves of enemies, with some mages thrown in, will be the ideal environment for the Winter's Guile with the Devour build. A particularly effective place I found was the Castellum, but again, probably not in the prestige mode. The Crucible is a different story though. If you can trigger the Warlord's Sigil perk a few times, then you can theoretically one-shot melee enemy guardians, but the frequency of triggering this is very low. Getting a single melee kill in PvE will give you a 50% damage buff, so instead of dealing 90 damage, you'll deal 135 damage per melee attack, which will definitely help you if you can use it. But since it only lasts for 5 seconds and requires a melee to be the killing blow to refresh the stack, I can't really see the potential in the Crucible. If you can make it work though, whether it's because you're a melee god in the Crucible, or because you're playing a particularly squishy lobby, then Winter's Guile can be a devastating choice at times. But honestly, if you're finding the lobby that easy anyway, pretty much anything will be a devastating choice. So what do you guys think of the Winter's Guile? Do you put them in high regard as far as Warlock exotics go? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching guys.